I remember as a very young man going to a National Speakers Association chapter meeting. And one of the very first things I noticed upon entering the room was I was by far the youngest person in the entire room. I was a 21-year-old in a room full of people who I think the next person up was like in their late 40s. And many of the people there were in their 50s and their 60s, and they built these giant successful businesses. And I'm just sitting there in my suit being like, oh my God, I feel like a fraud. I feel like an imposter. I was like, are these people going to want to talk to me? Are they going to want to get to know me? Are they going to take me seriously? And I remember one of the first people I connected with, I said to him, he asked me how I was. He asked me what I do. And he asked me how I felt about being there. And I was honest with him. And I said, I'm kind of nervous because I'm the youngest person in the room. And I just feel like people won't take me seriously. And he was in his mid 60s, successful business. He looked back at me and said, Brandon, he's like, I didn't think that about you once. He said, people in this world, they're not looking at you and asking how old you are. They're not looking at you and demeaning you because of your age. He said to me, Brandon, people only care about the value that you can bring them. He said, if you're 40 and can bring value, great. If you're 20 and can bring value, awesome. If you're 15 and can bring value, even more incredible. Right. And we're in a world now where some of you listening might be 15 years old. You might be 10. Who knows how old you are? The reality is the scope of business has changed so dramatically where you can receive a full education in business, in entrepreneurship, before you even reach the age of 18 when you're considered a quote unquote adult. So maybe we should redetermine what being an adult actually means, because today we are speaking to 18-year-old entrepreneur. His name is Marko Stavrou. We met several months ago. And for those looking to build a brand, for those looking to motivate their team of Gen Z, for those businesses looking to market to young people, to Gen Z, and for you Gen Z entrepreneurs and business owners yourself, this is going to be the conversation for you. And even if you're not a quote unquote young entrepreneur, you're going to take a lot away from this conversation as well, with real strategies and principles of business and success. So without further ado, you know the fee for the show. When you take away any piece of value, share this show with just one other person who could use it the most. You're the reason the show has grown. We don't have ads. We don't have sponsors. We don't want to interrupt your viewing experience. And we thank you for sharing the show. So let's talk to the man of the hour, Mr. Marko Stavrou, all the way from Africa, recently back from Greece. It's great to have you, Marko. For those who don't know Marko is one of Africa's top teenage Gen Z entrepreneurs, speakers, and podcast hosts. He's the co-founder of Hustlers Global, a company helping Gen Z entrepreneurs build and scale their businesses faster with less money. He also consults corporations on how to better connect with their Gen Z consumers and their employees. Brother, it's great to have you here. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for the amazing introduction. It's such an honor.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm curious. I just talked about my experience when I was young, and I was older than you at this point, right? I was 21 in a room full of these very highly successful business people. Did you have a point in your life, Marko, where you were like thinking of yourself as, I'm too young to be in this room? Who are these people I'm hanging out with? Are they going to look down on me? Like, did you have a moment like that or no?
Absolutely. And as you were speaking about the first event you attended, I just went straight to the first event I ever attended, which was actually with my uncle, because my parents, for whatever reason, didn't want to go or didn't think I was serious about going. So I convinced my uncle, let's go to this convention. I booked the ticket. And to this day, one of the gentlemen that I've met there, he's part of my advisory team, and we're definitely still in contact. So I had the same emotions. I had the same feelings. I think I was about 14 at the time when I went to this convention. And as you said, you're the only young person there. You have no idea what you're doing. You're going up to speakers and you're going up to people trying to engage, trying to provide value, and trying to create this perception of hey, I'm enough. And that's also when I started wearing suits, because it's if I can portray myself to have a certain, value, maybe people will believe it. And until I get to that point, obviously it takes time. You can't just become, have a certain mindset and have a business overnight. But I can definitely relate to that story.
How long did it take for you to move from feeling uncomfortable in that room to feeling like you did belong? I want to just touch on what you just said, because I think it's really important. you started to change the way that you presented yourself in order to fit in with a group of people that you wanted to be around, who you wanted to learn from, who you wanted to garner respect from. You didn't just continue showing up in a white t-shirt, right? Like even right now, like you're home, yet you decided you're going to put the dress shirt on, you're going to put the tie on, you're going to put the vest on. Like you present yourself in a very specific way. And that is all about how you brand yourself. And I know you're big on branding. You talk about branding all the time. Everyone, you need to go follow Marko on LinkedIn and probably other platforms too, but I follow him on LinkedIn. Your branding is spot on. Like if I knew at 18 what you know, Marko, let me just say you're going to have a bright future, brother. And you're already having a bright life now. It's only going to get better. But I'm curious, when did it move from being uncomfortable in those rooms to feeling more at home?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's two. I think about it in two ways. One is having knowledge, and then one is applying. So the first stage of becoming, as like a real expert is actually I was listening to hundreds of podcasts at a time, and just consuming as much information as I can regarding strategies, reading books, listening to people, asking questions, and that also came back to my podcast. At the time, I had a show, and I was just learning and engaging with so many people at such a rapid rate. So that was the first kind of my building my self-esteem and confidence, and also my ability, right? Because there is that certain business acumen that you have to have when you're in those rooms. And the second thing was actually the internships and actually getting into business. Because it's one thing reading about funnels, it's one thing reading about marketing, it's one thing reading about sales, but actually to go and deliver it and to build out successful funnels and successful marketing strategies and go onto sales calls and communicate and sell, that's a totally different thing. And so I believe that, to answer your question, it was actually applying that knowledge in a business environment, and number one, consuming that and getting to a certain basis and getting some basics within business.
Yeah, no, well said. There's a big difference between learning something and then learning more and learning more and learning more and learning more. Let me tell you, the biggest thing that I see at conferences, at events, even at the National Speaker Association, the number one thing you see is people who learn and learn and learn some more and go back and back and back, and they have their notebook and they take the world's most copious amount of notes, and they find much pride in the notes that they take. And they're like, Brandon, look at these notes I got. I can share these notes with you. But my number one question to these people is, what's the last piece of knowledge that you actually applied and took action on? And people don't like to hear this, right? Some people, it's a wake-up call, but other people, they're like, well, I have a plan to do this and this and this when this perfect set of scenarios happens. And there's a lot of people who learn and learn and learn, but they never do. And that's the big difference, brother. And age makes no difference here. If you learn something, freaking apply it, right? And this is why it comes down to listening and learning the right things. And I have some follow-up questions for you there too. But apply what you learn, right? Take action. That's the only reason why
I don't enough to also accept that learning, right? And that feedback. The other day, I was having an Uber driver, got into an Uber, and the guy, I asked him, like, what is your passions? Are you building a side hustle? He's like, yeah, I'm starting this business, and I'm going to do this work with the government and this. And I basically just said to him, like, well, when is that happening? Or how is that happening? And what's your timeline? And what are your milestones? And he suddenly just got so defensive and just started like ridiculing me and saying like, Marko, like, what do you know? Or like, and so he knew nothing about me, but I was just asking genuine questions in a nice manner just to try and support the guy. But he just got so defensive and just started breaking me down and saying like, and so for me, I think that was part of my learning, is being humble enough. And especially when you're young, you think you know everything until you meet these amazing, minded people. And it's like, take the feedback and apply it. And most people don't. And I think, that brings back me to your point that you just mentioned.
The thing too is I can guarantee you get so much advice from people who are even like, I'm compelled to say, Marko, this is what you should do. Or Marko, this is what's going to happen for you. Or this is what you're going to find out. But then I stop myself and realize your experience is going to be very different than the way my experience was. We have a 10-year gap. That's a decade is a giant amount of time. And I can give you one thing with certainty, which is your life 10 years from now is going to be very, very different from your life right now. Things you never could have expected are going to come to fruition. Many of the things that you did expect are going to come to fruition, maybe even happen much sooner than you expected. But I'm curious for you, because you probably get this a ton, because it's fun and it's cool to give advice to young entrepreneurs, young business owners. Like, I saw you were hanging out with these guys. You made a post, I think like a week ago, where you have this club that you go to weekly, and everyone there is like in their 70s and their 80s, and you've learned about loss through that experience. And you also learn about humility when an 87-year-old beats you at the game, right? But I'm curious, how do you know when to accept certain advice and when to put it on the shelf and not use it? Like, how do you know when to accept advice from people?
I think it's just segregating, not only based on, like, there could be a billionaire that gives me advice, right? But I also look at values, I look at morals, I look at family situation. For me, even like someone like Elon Musk, right? People idolize him, but he's been married, I don't know, like 7 times and divorced. He doesn't know his kids. And so for me, it comes back to also like those things make a real significant difference in terms of how I receive your information. I'll always take it, but whether I take it to heart and I actually am affected by it, well, that's totally different. And so I like to just segregate those in my mind. And I know the people, friends and family and advisors who I take really seriously. And I'm like writing down on my journal and saying, I need to go reflect on these and I need to go get feedback and analyze them. And then other times where it's like, that's a great perspective. I respect you. But I'm probably not going to implement that in my life.
Yes. And like you said, you take the advice, you're gracious for it. Like, hey, thanks so much for that. I really appreciate it. But you don't need to tell that person whether you're going to apply it or not, right? Unless you are going to apply it. And then you can say, hey, is it okay if I keep you updated with how I apply this, how I execute on it? Can you continue to give me feedback? Like, especially from someone that you really respect. But if someone's giving me advice, like the Elon Musk example, I think that's something that not a lot of people say, but it's so true. I probably wouldn't take relationship advice from Elon Musk, but I would probably take advice on how to scale a business from 8 figures to 9 figures, or beyond. But I wouldn't take relationship advice. So look at the source, right? Consider the source and determine whether this information is actually going to be what you need at this moment in your life right now.
Absolutely. And even, not to criticize Elon Musk, but like even business advice, because you don't know what he's had to sacrifice to get his businesses to a certain place. And unfortunately, I might not be willing to he might give me the best advice. But if I know where it's leading to from a time and capacity and energy and health place, I'm not willing to do that. And so even, as I was saying before, even if it's from billionaires or even if it's from the best business coach or expert, still I analyze their whole life and their whole, like just analyze themselves as people. And for me, I get, like, as you said, it's very true. Everyone wants to give me advice and everyone wants to help me and everyone wants to be my mentor, which is great. And I'm so appreciative of it. But at the same time, it becomes hard to break away which information and which advice and which stories and which feedback am I taking seriously.
That's right. What you said is very important too, because I'm probably not going to be taking advice from Elon Musk and applying it, right? There's a few things I can learn from Elon Musk. It's to get to work, to focus on the task, know what you're working on. But at the same time, he's working on so many different companies, right? A lot of people where we are at our stage, we're not going to be focusing on 10 different things at once. That's generally a recipe for disaster, right? We want to focus on one thing monomaniacally, go deep into that thing, and then slowly expand from that point. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I received was from a mentor who said, Brandon, you really can't look at someone like Tony Robbins and compare yourself to them. And I was like, well, what do you mean? When he was my age, he was doing this, he was doing that, he was doing this. And they said, yeah, well, that was his journey. Right? That was his path. Things back then were different than things are now, right? They said, Brandon, you have your own path. They said, rather than look at someone who's 200 steps ahead from where you are right now, what if you found someone just a few steps ahead of you and really ask them deep questions? And also, that person's probably a lot more willing to give you the time of day than a billionaire or someone who's, traveling the world, someone who's at a much greater stage than you are right now. So find people who, and this isn't advice for you, this is just in general something that I've learned, find people who are a few steps ahead of you and look at what they're doing right now so that you can model their success. Don't reinvent the wheel, model what works.
100%. That's one of the reasons why I started Hustlers Global is to provide that few step person away directly that you can engage with, because that's what I wish I had on my journey. It is not one person, one business coach you could say implement all of these things, but someone that I could, when I got a law case against me, could phone up and say, hey, what do I do here? Or with a sales pitch, or with a corporate package, or so someone that just there in my sight, and I can consistently on a weekly basis put input into my life, as well as just a link to your comparing. It's one of the biggest problems Gen Z is facing right now. Because of social media, because of technology, we are constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And unfortunately, social media isn't real. And I think that parents and mostly, young people don't realize that social media isn't real. What you see on my LinkedIn, what you see on my Instagram is only the tip of the iceberg. It's only the best things that are happening in my life. You don't see, the family struggles. You don't see my personal struggles. You don't see when I dropped out of high school and I was having to make a decision. You don't see when I was sending 20 emails to get into university, right? You don't see all these tribulations. You see the best. And so for me, it's something that I'm also constantly working on, is not to compare myself to all these incredible, because there's always someone who's made more money than you, got a bigger business. You look at Forbes 30 under 30, you look at all these different, massive magazines that post these young people that are changing the world. Even LinkedIn. You want to get your self-esteem down, compare yourself to people on LinkedIn, right? Because there's always someone who's got a better career, got more degrees than you. They've been to Harvard, they've been to Stanford, they've traveled the world. And instead of just focusing on yourself and just also being satisfied with where you're at, you don't need to have 10 companies like Elon Musk. You don't need to have $1 billion in your bank account. You may just want to have a farm with your family. And this is one of the things I teach the young people as well, which is being satisfied and fulfilled with your own story and own narrative that you're building, and not this idolized hierarchy, societal narrative that everyone's pressing, where you have to have the biggest business by 18 and you have to be a world-renowned speaker and you have to be, working at the top law firm. And so, it's also a very powerful message to your community of people, because as entrepreneurs, we're always in this rush cycle. How do we build faster? How do we make more money? How do we grow the business? And instead of just as you mentioned in the beginning, I went to Greece. I spent time with family. I sacrificed when I could have grown my business more, when I could have done an extra 40, 50 sales calls. I didn't. And sometimes that's okay.
Yeah, because your values and you're aligned with those, and knowing those, and we kind of glazed over them. When I asked you, how do you know who to take advice from? You immediately said something that's very wise, which is, do their values align with my values, right? In the sense of where I want to learn from them, where I can align with them. And social media is not real, and it is very important. And you know this very well. You know that you are to curate the way that you want to be seen with your social media, especially when it comes to the people who view your page, who are the people who are actually going to be hiring you for your expertise, right? So use social media for the tool that it is, but don't base and compare your life with someone else's social media, because what you see on social media is exactly what that person wants you to see. Even if it is the post that talks about the hardships that someone's facing, they decided to go on social media and to share that story. And the thing about this too, and this is where the importance comes in, I meet so many people who don't have the most glossy, well put out content social media page. I meet so many people who don't have that image, yet I get on a Zoom call with them or I meet them in person, and they're the wisest people that I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, I never would have guessed by looking at your social media that you are such an expert at what you do. And while that's great, that's still a problem. Because what if you did have a strong social media that reinforced your expertise, that reinforced your wisdom? How many more people would you be able to reach? So while social media isn't real, it's important to curate it in a very specific way so that you can reach the people that you want to reach and make an impact on.
Well, that's the dilemma I'm also facing myself. It's I don't want to be consuming in social media because I know it affects me. I've seen it affect me in many, many ways. But at the same time, we've got a 1 in a 1 trillion chance of being alive and having this moment right now. So I better make the most of it. And when you've got these platforms that are free, I keep telling corporates it's free, so you got to leverage them, and you got to make sure that you're I met this young man who works at a big corporate firm. He's a chartered accountant. And I said to him, like, you're doing a disservice, not to yourself, to the world, that you're not putting out your wisdom and sharing your knowledge. And so, 5 days later, he started posting on LinkedIn, and I'm like, incredible. Your content's incredible. You're incredible. You're an inspiration. You motivate me to work harder, me to get my wealth generation starting generating early in my life. So absolutely agree with you.
And the sooner you get started, the better you become, to the point where a year from now, your content is going to be 100 times better than where it was when you started. Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels, for those who don't know him, he said something in the One Funnel Away challenge that I went through in 2017 that stuck with me forever, which is, if you want to change your life, then start creating content and post every single day for just 1 year. If you post every single day for 1 year, your life is going to look completely different 1 year from now than it does today. Now, as a Gen Z, you grew up in an environment that I didn't grow up in, right? You grew up with more technology than me. You grew up with having a cell phone sooner than I had a cell phone. Like, I'm actually curious, when did you get your first cell phone? How old were you?
So I got my first iPad I was a bit late because my parents wanted to just make sure like I monitor it. But like 13, and then my phone 15. 14.
Okay.
14, yeah.
So we were the same. I had Game Boys growing up, like the Game Boy Advance and the Color and all those things and gaming systems. And I got my first iPhone when I was 15 too. So, okay, maybe we're not too different there. My question for you is, when I was 15, I didn't create a company. Like, I didn't even realize that is something that I could do. Here you are at 18, but much earlier, you started going down this route, going to that conference with your uncle when you were 14. Like, that blows my mind. And you've created tons of awesome opportunities for yourself, like getting into university, using your podcast and leveraging that, which we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to let you off here without talking about that. But because that blew my mind when we connected for the first time and you told me that story. But how did you come across the idea and finally commit to building Hustlers Global? How did that begin for you? What inspired you to build a business in the first place? Tell me all about that.
Absolutely. So I started my official first business, and you can call it a side hustle all you want, but I'm going to call it a business, selling fidget spinners and sneakers at the age of 12. And that was purely because someone in my class just started selling sweets, and whatever reason, I was like, hey, I want to make some extra money. And that desire then just kind of came about. And I started that business, and for like a year and a half, like I sold like a lot of sneakers and a lot of fidget spinners, and I had like sales reps in the high school, and like there was 800 people in the high school, and I was selling to them every single day. And eventually the teachers had to stop the business because it's a problem in the classes. And that was, for some reason, I have no idea to this day why I started that business, but as soon as I did, something just ignited inside of me, and a fire was just like started burning. And I just started listening to podcasts. I started consuming information. I just started listening to as much business content as I could, and which then led me actually to getting onto social media. My first time I was on Instagram was at 13, and literally just following pages and kind of engaging with people's content and watching, Gary Vee and the, other content creators. And then I actually reached out when I created my Instagram account, my podcast. The first link to social media and online space was my podcast. And I started that at 14. I did 75 episodes. And part of that allowed me to get my first internship at a company called Giant Voices with Carson Jones, who actually was a podcast marketing agency. And they actually worked with actors from Hollywood. And so like I was working in the back end sales and also like the podcast, like I was booking people on podcasts and helping them get ranked on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And so that was a real powerful moment for me, because Carson believed in me at a young age that I could work. And two, I learned, as I said, real practical business skills and strategies. And so from then, I actually met my business partner at an event. Well, through another friend, we went to this event together, and through just conversations in the library, like I just said to my partner, whose name's Yanda, I said, I've got this problem, and the problem is this. I go to business events, I'm the only young person there. I go to online courses, I'm the only young person consuming it. I try and reach out to business mentors, I have to go to America and have a podcast. And so I wanted real practical information at the right time with the right people. And so I said to him, let's start this business, which at the time was just a publication. And now, I'm sure we'll chat about it later, has led to different avenues that we've built out.
Oh, that's so incredible. Congratulations on everything you've built up until this point, because I know the amount of hard work that goes into starting a podcast, much less, the amount of work that goes into doing 70 episodes of it, leveraging it to get into university, leveraging it for your first internship, and watching it evolve over time in ways that you couldn't have imagined before. So congratulations on your success with that. I want to go back to one of the first things that you just said to answer that question, which I think is so very, very important. And you already realized this when so many people don't. Why did you start calling what you do a business versus a side hustle? Because you said side hustle, but then you said, I'm going to call it a business. So many people are calling their business a side hustle. What is the difference in the language between side hustle and business?
It's a belief. It's a belief of how big this can go. And so when you speak about side hustle, you're almost, putting it down in a sense that
Mm-hmm.
like it's inferior, and it only has a certain limit of scale. Whereas whatever I did, I believed it could be it could make $1 million a month or $1 million a year, whatever that scale looks like. And so for me, it was perception. It was how I was portraying myself. Like if you come up to me and you say, yeah, I'm building a side hustle versus I'm building this business, I, automatically the way that I view you changes. And that's even why I wear a suit, right? Because half the world is about perception. How am I perceiving you? Am I perceiving you from a place of authority, or am I perceiving from a place of inferior, being inferior and not having that authority? And so it was very, very important for me, even on social media. A lot of the times I question myself and saying like, well, this is not really a business, but I still marketed it as like, when you're selling $3,000 packages of personal branding, consulting and coaching, if you don't call it a business, people aren't going to take you seriously. They're not going to even come onto the call. And so I think my self-esteem and confidence from a young and early age was really significant to my success and the reason why I'm here today. It's just constantly believing in my product and knowing that it has value. But in the beginning, when you're building out a product, you don't know how it's going to serve us, or what it's going to look like, or if it's going to be successful. You just have a belief about it, and you can put in certain systems, but you have no guarantee. And so in the beginning, I had to refund a bunch of clients because it didn't work out, right? But after 10 or 20 clients, you've now built out a proper product that has a system, that has a flow, that gets results, and then you can scale that. And I think a lot of young people are scared of that, right? Because they're scared of rejection, they're scared of failure. And so when you're building, even when I work with a lot of people who are in corporate and they want to make their transition into having their own business, and that's half their problem, is that they keep saying they're building out the product, they're building out the software, they're building out the app. But instead of just launching it, having the beta, getting the feedback, getting the testimonials, and actually just going full time into the business. And I think that's what I did really, really well.
That's right. 30% of the people that we encounter on a daily basis have a tax ID or a business entity of some sort. And this number blew my mind when I realized this. But guys, 30% of people have a business. But the reality is 80% of those people call their business a side hustle or a hobby. And the big difference between a side hustle and a hobby versus a business is a business earns you money, right? And if you're not growing, then you're dying, right? And the average rate of growth is 10%. So if you're not growing past 10% every year, then you're dying, right? And that simple switch in the belief structure of this is a side hustle, this is a hobby, this is something that I do on the side, to this is a business that I'm building so that one day I won't have to have this part-time job or full-time job that I don't like, or maybe I do like it, but I'd rather work for myself and do what I want. And I'm not saying that a business is for everyone, guys. It is not. And a lot of people find that out the hard way. Some people are better off being employees, and we need people like that. And you can build a successful life as an employee. You can be a millionaire. You can even be a billionaire as an employee. There's many people who've done it and continue to do it. But that switch to calling what you do a business, you heard it here from Marko. Stop calling what you do a side hustle and watch the change in your actions as a result from that. A lot of people too, Marko, start a podcast, but they don't think of it as a business. They become a coach or a consultant, but they don't think of it or call it a business. And that is the biggest downfall of podcasts. That's why most podcasts stop after 7 episodes. That's the actual statistic. And a lot of people, before I get there, a lot of people say, and they ask, why start a podcast? Why do I want to do this? Brandon, what you do is really cool, but that just seems like a lot of work. What's the point? Well, guys, the biggest and most effective parts of a podcast and most profitable pieces are the pieces that you as the viewer don't see, right? You can leverage this podcast in more ways than just having a sponsor that pays you $1,000 or having ads that pay you like 1 cent per view or whatever it is, even less. You can leverage your podcast and your show or your other services in order to score bigger opportunities. And this is something that blew my mind when I talked to you, Marko. Can you tell us how you use your podcast and leveraged it in order to get into university?
Absolutely. So I was 16 at the time. I had just, I like to say dropped out to make it just exaggerate a bit, dropped out of my private school. I had made a decision against basically every single friend and parent that was in my life. My parents at a certain stage then, started believing in me once I had a plan of action and, set a few things in play. But essentially, I left at 16 and decided to do Cambridge, which I was actually going to do 2 years, my last 2 years in 8 months. And the teachers actually at the center where I was doing it saying, it's not possible, you're never going to make it, you're not going to pass, you're not going to do it well. And so I actually ended up being able to pass and do the 8 months, the 2 years of work in less than 8 months. And I actually then was in a bit of a predicament because like many young entrepreneurs and like many people, they question whether they should go to university. At the time, I was already making quite a lot of money and I didn't really need to go to university to get a job. I'd already built up skills to be able to get into any job. I had already got job opportunities from people that I'd interned and worked at and within South Africa and internationally. And so making the decision was more of, I need a structured learning environment. The place that I wanted to go, which was Henley Business School, is a part-time university degree. So it offers me time. And then it also offers me practical lectures, because a lot of the lecturers had their own businesses. All my classmates today are in their 30s and 40s. So I'm learning so much. And we've done deals together. Some of a lot of them work for banks. So I've got deals through them. And so, yeah, it's been really, really valuable. But in terms of actually getting in, I sent an application through on their website and an email to one of the directors at the university saying, hey, I'm about to finish school and I would love to come to the university, knowing that on the website it says you need a minimum of 3 to 5 years of working experience managing people. You have to have a certain criteria and business acumen to get in to be able to actually do the course. And then suddenly, she responded saying, absolutely not. No ways, Marko. We are not going to accept you. I was at the time 17 years old. You don't have enough experience. And I thought to myself, I've broken the traditional route all my life. My thinking breaks the way society is imposed on me and in the world. And so I went against the world system and I actually stalked the dean of the university on Instagram. He had like a family account with a bunch of like family photos and like 70 followers. And I sent him a voice note. Now, bear in mind, when you've sent over like 100 voice notes to get podcast guests and messages, you have certain ways of, how to hook people in and what to say and how to say it. And so when I sent him this voice note, it was very tactical in terms of what I was saying when I was saying it. And so I sent him this voice note saying, hey, Jonathan, hope you're well. My name is Marko Stavrou. I'm a 17-year-old entrepreneur. I've got this podcast host. I'd love to do an article on you in my publication. Here's the links. Go check them out. And let's set up a time for next month. He said, absolutely, Marko. Let's do it. Sent him an email. Of course, didn't respond. Follow up. Get that interview in the schedule. And I didn't mention anything about me applying to the university, right? Just value up front, just portraying the podcast. And I got him onto a call. And just as we were about to end the Zoom session, I say to him, by the way, Jonathan, I'm really excited because Next year, this year, I'm finishing school. And next year, I would like to come to Henry Business School. However, I spoke to and I referenced the person's name so that he knows that I actually did the research and I actually emailed and reached out to the person and the director. And so I referenced her name and she said, I can't attend and I'm too young. And he actually, on the call, pulls out his phone and says, phones this director and says, hey, why, I'm sitting here with Marko Stavrou, why haven't you accepted him to Henry Business School? She says, hey, he's way too young, not enough experience, he hasn't managed people. And he starts reading out my LinkedIn experience. For those who don't know, on LinkedIn, it says your experience, and he starts reading out the different, internet, this company worked at this company, got this experience, and he basically responds to her saying, he's definitely got enough experience, please can you accept him? He ends the call, accepts me on that very podcast interview call, and gives me a scholarship. And so both my ability and confidence to actually deservingly say, I am enough to reach out to the dean and have this conversation. I have enough value. I am worthy of enough. And to have the platforms in place, both the podcast, the publication, and my LinkedIn, all in accordingly at the right time, perfectly timed. And that's the reason why he accepted me.
Bravo. I freaking love that story every time I hear it. And there's three things that I take out of that. The first thing is add value up front. You didn't message him and say, hey, I applied at the business school and I see that you're the dean and I'd love to have you on the show. It was, hey, I would love to talk to you. You're successful in what you do. I'd love to share your story for my audience of people who will hear from you and will learn. A lot of people, guys, you might be thinking these business titans or these people who've been in this game for a long time, they don't want to talk to me. I've got nothing to offer them. I have nothing to give them. You would be surprised at the amount of people who want to help you and, more importantly, will help you if they know that their message will get to a wider audience of people that they can also help at the same time. Add value, and never prejudge that someone's not going to want to help you. The second thing is, this is more of a strategy. So here's another strategy you can take away, guys, that Marko brilliantly said. And I see that more Gen Z individuals do this. And I don't know why everyone's not doing it, but send voice messages. When Marko and I were connected by Andrew Biernat, so shout out to you, Andrew. He's been on the podcast as well. The first thing Marko did was he sent me a voice memo. And it was, hey, Brandon, nice to meet you. Looking forward to connecting. Thanks so much. That was literally it. And I sent a voice memo back, and we had a chain of conversation in a voice memo. Voice memos are great because people can actually see that you are, in fact, a real human being, number one. They get to learn more about you, actually hear what you sound like, number two. It's more human, and it's also on the other person's time, right? So you get to choose when you listen and consume that voice memo. So it's not like a phone call, which can be inconvenient. It depends who's calling, obviously, right? But phone calls are becoming antiquated, and voice memos and social media communication is becoming more and more accepted. I remember some of the most incredible people I've had on the show, Marko, I've connected with on social media and sent a voice message. I think of Bob Berg, the author of The Go-Giver, who's an awesome human being. Shout out Bob Berg. And he's an author who sold millions and millions of copies of his book. And I was thinking the same thing of, why is he going to want to talk to me? But I went for it anyway. I tagged him, said, Bob, incredible book. He replied to my comment, and I said, this is what I need to do. I need to message him. So I sent him a voice memo, and I said, hey, I would love to have you on my show to share your message with my audience. Many of them have heard of you, I'm sure, but for those who won't, you'll have some more exposure for your book and what you do. And he was like, Brandon, I'd be more than happy to come on to your show. So, brother, just bravo to you.
Can I ask you a question? And how did that change your belief in
yourself?
Oh,
it helped me realize that I can bring anyone on this show. It doesn't matter who it is. If I wanted Elon Musk on the show, I would get Elon Musk on the show. That doesn't mean it would be easy. It simply means I know that it's possible because I did it once.
And that's exactly the same thing that happened to my first ever big guest that I had on my show was a guy named Sam Bucketeer. Unfortunately, he's passed away. But he, at the time, was running $100 million business. He had over 840,000 followers on Instagram. And so I was like, I'm going for it. 99% chance he won't respond. And when he did, and he gave me over an hour of his time. That changed everything for me. And as you
Wow.
said, if I make a decision today to interview Elon Musk or interview Richard Branson, I can 100% say that I can do it. I might have to go through 20 assistants and it might take me 2 years, but that belief and that self-esteem to say that I have the platform and that I myself, Marko Stavrou, age 18, being in South Africa, because this is another big problem. People blame their circumstance and their situation. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter where you are. You know, I live in a third world country, and that's why I took a lot of inspiration. Thank God for podcasts that I could get access to all this information and strategies and studies and people, because it changed my life.
You're an inspiration, brother. I'm so happy we're having this conversation. I'm just curious, did you connect with Sam Bucketeer in the same way that you connected with the dean from the school? Was it a different process? Can you give us like just even a 1 minute of how you made that connection happen?
So someone with 840,000 plus followers on just Instagram alone is getting tons of DMs. And so to try and get your way or bring that uniqueness or break through the DMs, a recommendation that I got from a very successful podcaster called Omar, and he said that put emojis in the front of your message. So I put a bunch of emojis in the front of my message, and I sent him a short little message saying, "Hey, my name's Marko. I'm a 16-year-old entrepreneur, podcaster. Would love to do the show. Would love 15 minutes." And for many weeks, he didn't answer. And what I actually did was on every single one of his posts, when he would post, I would comment and say, "Awesome post. You know, this is very, I resonate with this. I love this." I maybe tag someone. And then at the end of the comment, I would say, "Please can go check out my DM. Would love to do an interview." And so after like commenting on maybe 10 plus posts, he eventually saw that message. But now there's also a difference between seeing and responding, right? And so in order to get his assistant email, it's like following up. "Hey, Sam, let's organize. Hey, Sam, have you got a time next month?" The founder of Founder, which is spelled not founder like we know it,
Yes.
which is over like 4 million on Instagram and massive 8-figure business. He told me I have to wait like a year and a half to interview him. And obviously he's not expecting me to follow up with him, but I did, right? And exactly in a year and a half, I sent him a message saying, "Hey, Nathan, I want to organize a call with you. Let's do it." And so most people aren't willing to do that, right? And I think that also comes back to my own uniqueness and my skills. It's just I'm willing to do what most people aren't. And I posted a tweet that I want to just share. I think it was last Saturday. And I basically said, I'm working on a Saturday night. I don't have to. I just finished a full week of work. But I am not willing to go work for someone else and an unfulfilled job, serving people that I don't really care about in an environment that doesn't cater for freedom, either time or energy. And so I'm choosing to work on a Saturday night on my business because I need to get it to a certain stage and I want to scale it. And you have to choose your hard. You're either going to work for someone else and you're going to go through a traditional route where you're studying a 4-year degree and you're going to get an internship and you're going to make a base salary, or you're going to start a business at 15, 18, 25 and work 60 to 80-hour weeks and figure it out and make losses and go against your parents and go against your friends. But again, you have to choose your hard. And that's something that I really hold a strong belief in what I do and how I act.
Yeah, you're willing to do the things that other people won't do so you can have the life that most people don't have. But not even that, but so that you can do what you truly want to do. So many people give 40 hours a week minimum usually to a company that they don't even like, yet they won't even give themselves 3 hours a week to build up their business, not their side hustle, their business, right? So it's very clear to see why so many people, so many businesses nowadays fail. And it's not because businesses are actually failing. While that does happen, it's because that statistic is being dragged down by so many people who are just falling off and they don't even take the business seriously in the first place. What I liked what you said when you connected with Sam is when you connect with these big people, and when I say big people, they're human beings too, guys. They get dressed every single day, right? But they are busy people, just like we're busy. They have full schedules too, and they're very particular about where they're giving their time. What I like about what you said is you said to him in the message, once he actually read it, "Can I get 15 minutes of your time?" When I'm speaking to uber successful people, many followers. I know their schedules are full. Always put a time amount in there. Even if it's 5 minutes, if they like you, they'll likely give you 15 or 20 minutes, right? So be very specific about what it is you want when you're looking to connect with these people, whether it's to be on your podcast or join their university or do a business deal with them. Be very specific with what you're asking for. So Marko, you've given us your story from when you were a very young man to where you are now. What is it that you do now with Hustlers Global? Who do you help? And give us a picture of what the business looks like today.
Absolutely. Before we jump into that, I just want to quickly give one practical golden nugget when it comes to personal branding and LinkedIn, because I promised my audience that I would. So I want to quickly just drop one thing that I see both personal brands and even companies not implementing. And this is on your LinkedIn profile where it says experience. Instead of adding all these amazing jobs and positions that you've had, because that's basically just sharing more about you. But when a customer comes to your page, they want to see how can you provide them value. It's all about them. And so what I recommend doing is adding case studies, those could be written, or video testimonials to that experience channel where it says experience, add a case study, add video testimonials. So when people come to your profile, they can actually see, hey, he doesn't say he's the best at personal branding, or he doesn't say he's a leading Gen Z consultant. Other people say, and other people say he's a good speaker, and other people say he's a good podcast guest, and other people say he's a good, entrepreneur. And so that's a little quickly golden nugget for business owners.
That's very powerful. And it goes back to what you said too about when that dean called the assistant or the head of admissions or whoever that was. He read your LinkedIn experience out loud to this person. If you didn't set up your experience piece on LinkedIn, then he would have had nothing to read for you. And you're absolutely right. And I learned this from Dina Kalikovic, who is incredible on LinkedIn, an incredible copywriter, great content overall. But she said your experience should speak to the results that you get for other people. Yes, you were a sales leader at the company where you learned how to manage a team, you learned how to build a schedule, but your prospective clients don't care that you know how to build a schedule. They're going to want to know, how did that experience actually help you develop skills, and how will those skills help them? What's the result that you're going to get them? So that's powerful, brother. Thanks for sharing that nugget. So
yeah,
where is Hustlers Global now? Give us an idea of what you do today.
Absolutely. So we've been running for 3.5 years. I've got a partner that's got an office in Cape Town, and I'm in Johannesburg currently. And essentially what we do is we're an all-in-one platform for specifically Gen Z entrepreneurs, people from ages of 16 to 25 years old that have a business. We basically just help them scale faster with less money. And so along my journey, I had to spend thousands of dollars on coaching calls and courses and masterminds and going to different events. And really, only 20% of that, I really implemented and was really useful. Instead, what I wish I had was accountability partners, was direct mentors on a weekly basis that I was getting access to, that I could have a Q&A session with and say, hey, I just put in this marketing strategy, but it's not getting this results. Or I just put in this sales strategy, it's not getting results. What do you think? What is your feedback? I'm busy building my MVP. What do you think about it? What do I change? I'm busy raising $1 million. How do I do it? How do I get my pitch deck ready? Do you have access to investors? And so we're really building a platform, and that's being positioned as a membership currently, where we're giving access to these business owners the right information in the form of courses and articles and interviews and events, and then also people, right? So it's one thing learning from someone who's 40 or 60 and has been in business for 25 years, but it's another thing learning, as you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, someone who's 5 or 10 steps ahead of you, and they can really relate to your situation, and they actually deeply care. You go to these business coaches, and I've spent a lot of money and time with them, but essentially it's futuristic advice, right? Because right now what I need is, how do I get cash to my business? Not how do I put systems or culture or people in place so that one day I can start increasing my revenue. Right now do I get more clients? And through an accountability partner, he could become your client. And through a Gen Z community where they're facing, like if I have a digital marketing business and someone has a manufacturing business, boom, there's the link. Or if I have a content company or a podcast company and someone wants to launch new content for their business, there I go, a production company. And so it's allowing people to accelerate that process of getting new clients, getting the strategies, having the support, because we all know entrepreneurship's hard from a mental and emotional standpoint. And so our focus is a practical, real community environment mastermind. We just had our first in-person event. And so, yeah, it's the first of its kind from what I know in terms of a Gen Z focus. And I'm really, really excited to be scaling it up.
It was so cool. I took a look at those photos, and it was for those 35 and under, which was incredible because you don't see enough of those. It's just the reality. And it makes me feel good because I would have been invited because I'm 28. So maybe I will be visiting one of your future events, but the production looked incredible. Like you had speakers, you had a lot of people there. People were smiling, people were happy, people were having a good time. So congrats on your first in-person event. I know that you're going to do many more. The first one is so special, but enjoy it because they're only going to become bigger. They're only going to be, it's just going to keep growing from here. So super awesome. Thanks for going into what you do with Hustlers Global. Guys, links are in the description so that you can join the Hustlers Global membership, get more information on that. But I know that many of you are going to want to connect directly with Marko. So Marko, are you open to providing your email address for people on the show right now so they can reach out to you and set up a time to chat with you?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you'll put the spelling in the description as well, but it's just marko@hustlersglobal.com. And yeah, pop me a mail, pop me an Instagram DM. I'm good on socials, and I'd love to connect, just engage with you. If you've got a company, you want personal branding advice, I'm willing to give it without charge. You don't have to book a call, just pop me a mail. And so, yeah, very, very excited to see who comes on board through your community. And just to, again, as we say, it's all about serving people.
Absolutely. Marko@hustlersglobal.com for those listening. Links are in the description of the podcast or the live show, wherever you're watching and listening. And Marko, it was a pleasure to have you on the show, to hear your story, to hear where you're going and what you're doing now. And you're an inspiration to Gen Z, but also to entrepreneurs everywhere, no matter what age, brother. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And thank you for being on the show today.
It was such an honor. And my last message to people is you have one life. And so whether you're 15, 18, 28, 58, make sure that you're living a life of significance, not chasing money, not chasing success. Spend time with family, spend time with friends. If you're facing anxiety, if you're facing depression, analyze your life, make changes, because it's not too late. It really isn't. I've spent time with people that are 80 that have made changes. And so, yeah, it's a real life. It's a real opportunity. And leverage personal branding because, as you said, 1 year of content can truly change your life.
I can't think of a better way to end it, man. Thank you very much. You heard it from Marko. YOLO. Live the one life that you have and live it with knowing your values, right? Aligning with what's most important to you. Like Marko said, spending it with family, building your relationships while also building your business so that you can give back to other people. If I see one thing that's remarkable about Marko, and there's many different things, he is so hell-bent on delivering value. And you even heard it. He's like, I got to give this one tip because I promised my audience I would, right? He wasn't just all about sharing his story, where he is, what he's doing, but hey, this is what I've done that will help you too. And this is how you can do it and learn it in a second when it took me a few years to learn this myself. And that is the common thread amongst all successful entrepreneurs and all the most incredible guests I've had on the show. They are always looking to give, and help people grow. So no matter your age, I know that you took something away from this conversation with Marko Stavrou. Start a conversation with him at marko@hustlersglobal.com. Marko is spelled MARKO at hustlersglobal.com. Links are in the description to check out Hustlers Global membership so that you can join a community of people. You are the average of the 3 to 5 people that you spend the most time around. So share this show. If you took away even one piece of value, you are the best part of the Be Better team, and you're the reason why this show has grown the way it has over the last few years. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.